The stars trembled when the Vexhai Empire moved through space. Their dark red ships cut through the emptiness like knives through cloth. Behind them they left only broken worlds and peoples who bowed their heads in defeat. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator. Through the large windows he could see his fleet stretching out in all directions. 5,000 ships of war, each one bigger than most planets' entire defense forces, each one carrying enough firepower to turn a moon into dust. For 30 years, Kethvar had led these ships from one star system to another. 30 years of victory, 30 years of watching civilizations that had stood for thousands of years fall in mere days. Some tried to fight. Others surrendered immediately when they saw the Red Fleet approaching. It made no difference. The result was always the same. The Empire now controlled 17 star systems. Billions of people lived under Vexhai rule. They worked in the mines, built ships for the fleet, and sent their children to serve in the Empire's armies. They had learned that resistance only brought more pain. Kethvar was not a cruel man by nature. He took no pleasure in destroying cities or enslaving populations. But he understood power. He understood that fear was the greatest weapon of all. When a world saw what happened to those who fought back, they usually chose to surrender instead. This saved lives on both sides. It was simply efficient. The admiral turned to his second-in-command, Commander Zelthos. The younger officer was studying a holographic display that showed their next target, a small yellow star with several planets orbiting around it. The third planet from the star glowed blue and green. It looked almost beautiful from this distance. "What do our scouts tell us about this system?" Kethvar asked. "Very primitive, sir," Zelthos replied. "They call themselves humans. They have only just learned to travel between planets in their own system. Their fastest ships take months to reach their nearest neighbor world. They have no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no particle beams. They still use explosive chemicals to power most of their technology." Kethvar nodded. "Population? Approximately 8 billion on the main world. Small colonies on 2 other planets and several moons. Their military consists of chemical rockets and metal projectiles. Our analysts estimate their most powerful weapons could not even scratch the paint on one of our destroyers." The admiral walked closer to the display. The blue and green planet rotated slowly in the hologram. White clouds swirled across its surface. It reminded him of his own home world, before the Empire had strip-mined it for resources to build more ships. "Any unusual technology?" he asked. "Sometimes the primitive ones surprise us with something clever." "Nothing, sir. They have basic computers, simple communication systems, and crude nuclear power. They are at least 200 years behind our most backward colony worlds." Kethvar smiled. "Good. We will use the standard approach. Full fleet demonstration at the edge of their system. Give them 12 hours to surrender. If they refuse, we will destroy one of their smaller colonies as an example. That should convince them to see reason." This was how it always went. The Vexhai fleet would appear suddenly at the edge of a star system, their ships arranged in perfect formation. The sight of 5,000 warships was usually enough to break the spirit of any defending force. Most civilizations had legends about armadas like this. Seeing one appear in their own sky was like watching death itself come calling. The really smart ones surrendered immediately. They had heard stories from other worlds about what happened to those who fought. The Vexhai did not destroy planets for pleasure, but they would do it to make a point. Better to live as servants of the Empire than to die as free people. That was the choice they offered. "Set course for the human system," Kethvar ordered. "We will arrive in 3 days. Send word to the other fleet commanders. Standard intimidation formation. I want those humans to see exactly what they are facing." "Yes, sir," Zelthos replied. He began transmitting orders to the other ships. Across the fleet, captains received their instructions. They had done this so many times that it was like a dance. Everyone knew their part. As the ships prepared to enter hyperspace, Kethvar thought about his career. 30 years of conquest, 17 star systems brought under imperial control, hundreds of billions of people now working for the glory of the Vexhai Empire. It had been a good life, successful, profitable, clean. He had earned his position through skill and ruthless efficiency. Other admirals in the fleet were more brutal, more eager to use violence. But Kethvar understood that the best victories were won before the first shot was fired. Why waste resources destroying things when you could simply take them intact? The humans would understand this. They would look at his fleet and realize that resistance was pointless. They would surrender, as all the others had. Their world would be added to the Empire. Their people would learn to serve new masters. In a generation or two, they would forget they had ever been free. The first ships began disappearing into hyperspace, their forms stretching and twisting as they entered the dimension between dimensions. Soon the entire fleet would be traveling faster than light toward the human system. In 3 days, they would emerge and present themselves to yet another world that thought it was safe. Kethavar had no doubt about the outcome. He had never lost a battle. He had never even faced serious resistance. The humans were primitive and weak. They would fall like all the others. He did not know that this time would be different. He could not imagine that a single human ship would soon stand in his way and change everything. The Admiral was about to learn that even the mightiest empire could stumble when it met the right kind of obstacle. 3 days later, the Vexhi fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the human solar system. 5,000 red warships appeared in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of the distant yellow star. The sight was magnificent and terrifying. It was meant to be. Admiral Kethavar stood on his bridge watching as his ships took their positions. The formation was designed to show maximum force. The largest battleships in front, their weapons pointed toward the inner system. Behind them, rows upon rows of cruisers and destroyers. The message was clear: surrender or face total destruction. All ships report ready, sir, Commander Zelthos announced. Long-range sensors show the humans have detected our arrival. Their communication networks are very active. As expected, Kethavar said. They are probably trying to decide whether to fight or surrender. Begin the demonstration. I want every weapon system powered up and visible on their sensors. Across the fleet, weapon ports opened and energy began building in plasma cannons. The humans would see this on their instruments. They would understand that each ship carried enough firepower to level entire continents. Most civilizations became very reasonable when faced with such overwhelming force. Sir, the sensor operator called out. We have something unusual on the screens. Kethavar turned. What is it? A single ship, sir. Human design. It is moving toward us from the inner system. The Admiral walked to the sensor station. On the display, a tiny dot moved slowly toward his massive fleet. It was impossibly small compared to even his smallest destroyer. Are there others behind it? No, sir. Long-range scans show it is alone. Kethavar frowned. Perhaps it is a messenger ship, coming to discuss terms of surrender. This had happened before. Sometimes a civilization would send a small vessel to negotiate. It showed wisdom, but as the human ship got closer, something seemed wrong. It was not broadcasting any surrender signals. It was not requesting permission to approach. It was simply coming straight toward the center of the Vexhi formation. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the human vessel, the communications officer reported. Put it through, Kethavar ordered. The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of the human ship. A woman in a blue uniform sat in the captain's chair. Her hair was dark and her eyes were steady. She looked directly at Kethavar as if she could see him through the screen. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Defiant, she said. Her voice was calm and clear. You are in human space without permission. Turn your ships around and leave immediately. You are not welcome here. The bridge of the Dominator fell silent. Every officer stared at the screen in shock. Commander Zelthos made a choking sound. The communications officer forgot to close his mouth. Kethavar could not believe what he had heard. A single human in a ship smaller than his personal shuttle was ordering the entire Vexhi fleet to retreat. It was like an insect challenging a dragon. He stepped closer to the screen. I am Admiral Kethavar of the Vexhi Empire. You are facing 5,000 warships. Each one of my destroyers is larger than your entire vessel. Surrender immediately and your people will be treated fairly. Captain Chen did not blink. I gave you an order, Admiral. Turn around and leave. This is your only warning. The human captain ended the transmission. The screen went dark. Kethavar stood in silence for a long moment. In 30 years of conquest, nothing like this had ever happened. No one had ever spoken to him this way. The sheer audacity of it was almost admirable. Almost, sir, Zelthos asked quietly. What are your orders? The Admiral turned to his officers. Several of them were trying not to smile. They found the situation amusing. A primitive human thinking she could threaten the mighty Vexhi Empire. It was ridiculous. Destroy that ship, Kethavar ordered. Use the forward destroyers. A simple demonstration should be sufficient. Yes, sir, the tactical officer replied. He sent orders to 3 destroyers in the front line. Ships responding. They are locking weapons on target. On the tactical display, HFY could see the human ship continuing its approach. It showed no sign of fear or retreat. The captain was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. Destroyers report weapons locked and ready, the tactical officer announced. Fire, HFY commanded. 3 Vex-High destroyers opened fire simultaneously. Plasma bolts and particle beams lanced out toward the tiny human vessel. The combined firepower was enough to vaporize a small asteroid. The human ship should have disappeared in a flash of light and metal, but something impossible happened. The human ship moved, not the slow, clumsy movement of a chemical rocket. It moved like a living thing, sliding sideways just as the weapons fired. Every shot missed by mere meters. Sensors show clean misses, sir. The tactical officer reported, confusion in his voice. All weapons missed target. Fire again, HFY ordered. His voice was still calm, but there was an edge to it now. The destroyers fired a second volley. This time, the human ship seemed to dance between the energy beams. It twisted and rolled with impossible grace. Again, every shot missed. Sir, this should not be possible, Commander Zelthos said quietly. Their ship is too slow to evade our targeting systems. HFY watched as the human vessel continued its approach. It was still moving toward the center of his formation as if nothing had happened, as if 3 of his most powerful warships had not just tried to destroy it twice. Send 6 more destroyers, he ordered. Full weapons spread. I want that ship turned to scrap metal. 9 Vex-High destroyers now focused their weapons on the single human ship. The amount of firepower being directed at Captain Chen's vessel could have leveled a major city. The targeting computers locked on. The weapons charged. Fire, HFY said. The space around the human ship erupted in light and energy. Dozens of plasma bolts and particle beams converged on the tiny target. There was no way anything could survive such an attack. When the light faded, the human ship was still there, still intact, still moving toward them. And for the first time in 30 years, Admiral HFY felt something he had not experienced since he was a young officer. Uncertainty. The bridge of the Defiant shook as another wave of energy blasts passed just meters from the hull. Captain Sarah Chen gripped her command chair and watched the tactical display. 27 Vex-High ships were now firing at them. The space around her vessel looked like a deadly light show. Distance to Fleet Center? She asked. 40,000 kilometers and closing, Captain, her navigator replied. Lieutenant Kim Park was young but steady. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, adjusting their course to avoid the incoming fire. At the tactical station, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Rodriguez worked with inhuman speed. His fingers danced across holographic displays that showed probability calculations, weapon firing patterns, and trajectory predictions. Sweat ran down his face despite the cool air on the bridge. Next volley in 8 seconds, he announced. 36 plasma bolts, 16 particle beams. Recommend evasion pattern Delta 7. Execute, Chen ordered. The Defiant rolled and twisted just as the alien weapons fired. The ship moved like water, flowing around the deadly energy that should have destroyed it. Every shot missed by the smallest possible margin. It was a dance of mathematics and precision that no human pilot could perform manually. How long can we keep this up? Chen asked quietly. Rodriguez did not look up from his displays. The probability engines are running at maximum capacity. We have maybe 2 hours before the system overheats. The crew can handle the stress for another hour after that, but not much longer. Chen nodded. She had known this from the beginning. The Defiant was not built to win a fight against 5,000 enemy ships. It was built to do something else entirely, something more important than winning. On her personal screen, she could see messages flooding in from Earth. The government was terrified. The military was demanding to know what she was doing. The media was calling her everything from a hero to a madman. She ignored them all. Admiral HFY appeared on her main screen again. His calm expression was gone. Now he looked angry and confused. Captain Chen, he said, I do not know how you are avoiding our weapons, but this cannot continue. You have 1 ship against my entire fleet. Surrender now and I will spare your life. I told you to leave, Chen replied. You are still here. That makes you the one who needs to surrender. She cut the transmission before he could respond. Captain, Rodriguez said, the alien fleet is changing formation. They are bringing more ships forward. Looks like they are getting frustrated. Chen smiled. Good. Frustrated enemies make mistakes. What Kethvar could not see was the real purpose of the Defiant's mission. Hidden throughout the outer planets of the solar system, dozens of monitoring stations were recording everything. Every weapon the aliens fired, every ship movement, every communication signal. The data was being analyzed and transmitted back to Earth's defense network. The Defiant was not trying to destroy the enemy fleet. It was learning about them. Every missed shot taught the humans something new about Vex-High technology. Every formation change revealed their tactical thinking. Every frustrated command showed their weaknesses. "Sir," Rodriguez called out, "I am picking up communication signals from the alien fleet. They are talking to each other more than usual. Can you decode any of it?" "Some of it. Basic tactical information, but there is something else. The tone is different. They sound worried," Chen understood. The Vex-High had never faced anything like this. Their entire strategy was based on overwhelming force and intimidation. When that failed, they had no backup plan. They were like a hammer looking for nails, and the Defiant was refusing to be a nail. The ship shuddered as another volley of energy blasts passed nearby. This time, 43 ships had fired at once. The probability calculations were becoming more difficult as the aliens added more weapons to the attack. "Evasion successful," Rodriguez reported, "but they are learning our patterns. The next wave will be harder to avoid." "How much harder?" 67% chance of taking damage. "If they keep adding ships, that number will go up quickly." Chen made a decision. "Signal Earth. Send them everything we have learned so far. Full tactical analysis of enemy capabilities and weaknesses." "Transmitting now," the communications officer replied. The Defiant continued its impossible dance through the deadly space between the alien ships. Every second of survival was precious. Every moment of data collection brought Earth closer to understanding their enemy. But something else was happening that Chen had not expected. Word of the battle was spreading throughout the Vex-High fleet. Soldiers who had never seen their weapons fail were watching in amazement as a tiny human ship made their entire armada look helpless. On the bridge of a Vex-High cruiser, Commander Vexmol watched the tactical display in disbelief. "How is this possible?" he asked his weapons officer. "Unknown, sir. All systems are functioning normally. We are hitting exactly where we aim, but the human ship is not where we expect it to be." "Are they using some kind of time manipulation technology? Sensors show no temporal disturbances. They appear to be predicting our attack somehow." Vexmol had served in the fleet for 15 years. He had conquered 8 worlds personally. He had never seen anything like this. A primitive species was making the mighty Vex-High Empire look like amateurs. Similar conversations were happening on ships throughout the fleet. Confidence was being replaced by confusion. Pride was giving way to doubt. The myth of Vex-High invincibility was starting to crack. Admiral Kethvar felt it too. He ordered more ships into the attack formation. 50 destroyers and cruisers now focused their fire on the single human vessel. The space around the Defiant became a storm of deadly energy, but still the human ship danced through it all, untouched and defiant. And with every missed shot, every failed attack, the legend of the unstoppable Vex-High Empire grew a little smaller. Admiral Kethavar's hand shook with rage as he watched the tactical display. 200 ships now surrounded the single human vessel, pouring deadly fire into the space around it. The amount of energy being released could have destroyed entire moons. Yet the tiny ship continued to slip through the attacks like smoke through fingers. "This is impossible," he roared at his officers. "One primitive ship cannot evade the entire fleet." Commander Zelthos stepped forward carefully. "Sir, perhaps we should consider retreat. We are exposing ourselves to unknown human capabilities. This could be a trap." The Admiral turned on him with fury. "Retreat? From one ship? Do you want to be the laughingstock of the entire Empire? Do you want other worlds to think the mighty Vex-High fleet runs away from insects?" "No, sir, but I have conquered 17 star systems." Kethvar screamed. "I have never lost a battle." "I will not be defeated by these pathetic humans." The bridge fell silent. Everyone could see that their admiral was losing control. The calm, efficient leader they had followed for years was becoming something desperate and dangerous. "Bring in the heavy battleships," Kethvar ordered. "All of them. I want every weapon in the fleet focused on that ship." "Sir," the tactical officer said quietly, "that will leave our flanks unprotected. Standard doctrine says—" "I know what doctrine says," the Admiral snapped. "Bring them in now. Across the fleet, massive battleships began moving from their protective positions. Ships that were meant to guard against surprise attacks were abandoning their posts. The entire formation was collapsing into a chaotic mass around one small human vessel. On the Defiant, alarms were sounding throughout the ship. The probability engines were running so hot that the air around them shimmered with heat waves. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez wiped blood from his nose where a blood vessel had burst from the strain of maintaining the calculations. "System overload in 6 minutes," he reported. "After that, we are flying blind." Captain Chen nodded grimly. She had known this moment would come. The Defiant could not dance forever, but it had danced long enough. "Signal Earth," she ordered. "Tell them the package is ready for delivery." What Admiral Kethvar did not know was that every second of the battle was being broadcast live throughout human space. Hidden transmitters on the Defiant were sending detailed recordings of the entire Vexhai fleet to monitoring stations on Jupiter's moons. The aliens' ship designs, weapon capabilities, formation patterns, and communication frequencies were all being analyzed and cataloged, but the broadcasts were not staying within the solar system. Human deep space probes, launched years earlier, were picking up the signals and retransmitting them to destinations far beyond Earth. The galaxy was watching as a single human ship made the dreaded Vexhai Empire look helpless. On a world called Kepler Prime, beings who had surrendered to the Vexhai without a fight watched in amazement. Their leaders gathered around communication screens, seeing something they had thought impossible. "They are fighting back," whispered Chancellor Morden. "The humans are actually fighting back. And winning," added General Kextar. "Look at them. One ship is making fools of the entire invasion fleet." Similar scenes were playing out across 17 star systems. Billions of people who lived under Vexhai rule were seeing their conquerors fail for the first time. The empire that had seemed unstoppable was being stopped by creatures they had never heard of. Back in human space, the Defiant was reaching its limits. The ship's hull was glowing from the heat generated by its impossible maneuvers. Several crew members had collapsed from the extreme forces their bodies were enduring. "Captain," Rodriguez gasped, "the engines are about to fail. The mathematics are becoming too complex. There are too many variables." Chen looked around her bridge. Her crew was dying from exhaustion and stress, but they had completed their mission. The data Earth needed had been gathered and transmitted. Now it was time for the final act. "All hands," she announced over the ship's communication system. "Prepare for final transmission. We have done what we came here to do." She opened a channel to the Vexhai fleet. Admiral Kethvar's face appeared on her screen, twisted with rage and frustration. "You cannot escape forever, human," he snarled. "I will destroy you and then I will burn your world to ashes." "You still don't understand, do you?" Chen said calmly. "This was never about escape. We came here to teach the galaxy something important." "What?" Kethvar demanded. "That you can be beaten." She activated the final transmission. Every monitoring station in human space received the complete tactical analysis of the Vexhai fleet. Ship designs, weapon specifications, formation weaknesses, communication codes. Everything needed to fight back against the Empire. But more importantly, the transmission was being received by hidden receivers throughout the Vexhai Empire itself. Rebel groups that had been planning uprisings for years suddenly had detailed information about their oppressors' capabilities and weaknesses. The Defiant's engines finally failed. The ship stopped its impossible dance and hung motionless in space, surrounded by hundreds of enemy vessels. But it had accomplished something greater than survival. On 17 different worlds, revolution was beginning. The myth of Vexhai invincibility was dead, and Admiral Kethvar, in his rage to destroy one small ship, had given away every secret his empire possessed. The tiny human vessel had not won a battle. It had started a war that would reshape the galaxy. The Defiant hung silent in space, its engines dead and its hull cracked from the impossible stresses it had endured. Captain Sarah Chen sat in her command chair, watching as hundreds of Vexhai ships closed in around her vessel. Her crew was exhausted but alive. They had done what they came to do. Admiral Kethvar appeared on her screen one final time. His face was pale with rage, but there was something else in his eyes now. Fear. "You have fought well, human," he said through clenched teeth. "But this changes nothing. I will destroy your ship and then your world will burn." Chen smiled sadly. "Admiral, you still don't understand what just happened here. Before Kethvar could respond, alarms began sounding throughout his flagship. His communications officer turned from his station with a shocked expression. "Sir, we are receiving urgent messages from the homeworlds. Multiple systems are reporting uprisings. The rebels have detailed information about our ship designs and weapon systems. They know exactly how to fight us." The admiral's face went white. "That is impossible. How could they?" "Every second of this battle was broadcast across the galaxy," Chen interrupted. "Every world under your control watched you fail to destroy one human ship. They saw that you could be beaten, and we gave them the tools to do it." More reports flooded in from across the Vexhai Empire. On Kepler Prime, rebel forces had seized the orbital defense platforms using tactics specifically designed to counter Vexhai technology. On Zarion 4, the Resistance had taken control of the main communication hub and was broadcasting calls for revolution to neighboring systems. "Sir," Commander Zelthos reported, his voice shaking, "we are receiving reports from 13 systems. Rebellions have begun on over 40 worlds. The governors are requesting immediate military support." Kethvar stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. His perfect empire, built on fear and the myth of invincibility, was collapsing because one small ship had refused to surrender. But the worst news was yet to come. "Admiral," the sensor operator called out. "New contacts approaching from the inner solar system. Multiple ships. Human design." On the tactical display, dozens of ships emerged from behind planets and moons where they had been hiding. These were not like the Defiant. They were larger, sleeker, and clearly built for war. Behind them came even more vessels, rising from the surfaces of asteroids where they had been disguised as mining stations. Captain Chen watched Kethvar's expression change from rage to disbelief. "You thought we were primitive," she said quietly. "You thought we had only just learned to travel between planets. We let you think that." The truth was devastating. Humanity had known about the Vexhai Empire for over a decade. Hidden probes had observed their conquests and studied their technology. Earth's brightest minds had spent years preparing for this moment, building ships and weapons specifically designed to fight the alien invaders. "The Defiant was never meant to defeat your fleet," Chen continued. "It was meant to gather intelligence, broadcast your weaknesses, and buy time for our real forces to get into position. You could have retreated when I first warned you. Instead, you gave us everything we needed to beat you." More human ships appeared, emerging from hiding places throughout the solar system. The fleet that Kethvar's scouts had missed was larger than his own. Worse, these ships had been designed using captured Vex-High technology, improved and adapted by human engineers. "Sir," Zelthos whispered, "what are your orders?" Kethvar stared at the tactical display. His fleet was scattered and disorganized from the hours spent trying to destroy the Defiant. The human ships were in perfect formation, clearly prepared for exactly this situation. And throughout his empire, rebellions were spreading like wildfire. The communications officer looked up from his station. "Sir, message from the Vex-High High Command. They are ordering immediate withdrawal from human space. The rebellions are spreading too fast. They need all available fleets to maintain control." The admiral closed his eyes. 30 years of conquest, and it had all come undone in a single day. The empire that had seemed eternal was cracking apart because they had underestimated a species they thought was primitive. "Captain Chen," he said finally, "I underestimated your people. That was my mistake." "No," Chen replied. "Your mistake was thinking that fear was stronger than hope. You taught the galaxy to be afraid of you. We taught them they could fight back." Kethvar turned to his officers. The bridge was quiet except for the constant stream of reports about rebellions and defeats across the empire. His perfect record was broken. His invincible fleet had been outmaneuvered by a species he had planned to enslave. "Signal the fleet," he ordered quietly. "We are withdrawing from human space." "Sir?" Zelthos asked in disbelief. "We have lost," Kethvar said simply. "Not just this battle, but the war. The Empire is falling apart. Every minute we stay here, more worlds slip from our control." The Vex-High fleet began to retreat, their perfect formation broken and their confidence shattered. They had come to conquer another primitive world. Instead, they had triggered the collapse of their own empire. As the alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, Captain Chen looked at her damaged bridge and exhausted crew. The Defiant was dying, but it had given birth to something greater. Across the galaxy, enslaved worlds were rising up, armed with knowledge and inspired by the courage of humans who had refused to surrender. The age of the Vex-High Empire was ending. The age of resistance had begun, and it had all started with a single ship that dared to block the path of those who thought they were unstoppable.